tonight. Just a little bit about myself. I'm suffering from at least 2 broken ribs at the moment. Got back from South Africa yesterday and broke them the night before I went. So if I cough or sneeze and then screech, that's just a normal thing. So I did my PhD in fire investigation methodology, and I used to be in the fire brigade, London Fire Brigade, for just over 30 years. And I retired almost 12 years ago and started up Fire Investigations UK. And thought I would, with my experience and qualifications, I would fall out of a window and go upwards. But that's not the case. It's such a niche market. And our competitors were people like Burgoynes and Hawkins that have been around, forensic engineers, for decades, sort of 50, 60 years. But we're here 12 years later nearly, and we must be doing something right, I hope. I'm also a liveryman of the Worshipful Company of Firefighters. I was born in the City of London. I was born in St Bart's Hospital, just down the road from St Mary Le Bow, where I got married in St Mary Le Bow. So I'm a true Cockney, as they say. My office used to be next door, the other side of Cannon Street on the right, which is where the fire station is. And I centralised fire investigation from 5 different locations in London to that location there. And they've got the hydrocarbon detector dogs there as well, so it really works well. So that's it. I'm going to whiz through. It was difficult to know what to discuss with you because I didn't know who the audience was, and I couldn't really talk about some of the live cases I'm involved with, or even those that I think are dead and buried, because they never are dead and buried until the check's written. And I've been involved in some super yacht fires that have involved lithium-ion batteries, so I want to leave a bit of space at the end to discuss a bit of advice on lithium-ion batteries and how they should be managed. But what I did think I would share with you is some of the fire tests that I've done over the years that are directly related to insurance claims and to criminal cases as well, so murders or defence cases. And when I got involved 23 years ago in fire investigation, I was told by a colleague in the States, if you can do a test, fire test, do it, because you never know what's going to come out of that test. So, and there are some moments, as you'll see here tonight, where we all said, I wasn't expecting that. But it certainly helps when you go to court or the case goes to court. And there are 2 cases I'm going to talk about tonight that are vessel related, that the whether it was through, I think it was both were Knox-Johnson cases, but then they went on to personal injury claims, which involved another set of legal firm, and I now do all their fire work for personal injury claims, because the 2 cases that I did these tests on, and they won the case on the strength of that. So it's pretty powerful, and they don't have to be complicated, but they can be expensive. I don't know if you remember the block of flats before Grenfell was in South London called Lacanau, where 6 people died, and I was the lead investigator on that. We reconstructed one of the flats there and the whole corridor in the flat. So very, very worthwhile doing, but they can be expensive, but they don't need to be. So I'm going to give you a medley of fire tests tonight. And the case studies, one is about an electric toaster, and the question was it the toaster or was it the gas grill above it that caused the fire? Then fridge freezers, was it the fridge freezer or an external source that caused the fire? A gas hob, whether this was a misuse of the gas hob or there was a defect with the gas hob or a supply. And again, all of these issues that we get on vessels anyway. Gas cylinder misuse, was it a defective valve, misuse of the cylinder, or malicious actions that caused this fire? Then energy to a light fitting during a fire in progress, which I'll expand on as I get to it. Portable camping hob, was it misuse or was the hob defective? These are these cheap £10 things with a cartridge you put in. Well, that was interesting. That was interesting. But then petrol and cigarettes, the myths that surround those you see on films on television, where the cigarette gets flicked into the petrol and it bursts into flames. and then watered Christmas trees. Don't get many of these on vessels, I'm sure. But if you're into the super yachts and they decide to have a real tree on there, I'm going to tell you, no real tree is ever safe, irrespective of what the National Institute of Standards and Technology in America promote, that a well-watered Christmas tree is safe. And you'll see a great picture of me. I've got a proper COVID haircut. And then a murder or not. This was really interesting. Saved the most interesting till last, because this was the police spent millions on this case, and we sort of helped them resolve it. Okay, let's get on with it. Some of the video I'm going to whiz through purely because this is an hour and a half presentation into 45 minutes, and we can have that discussion on batteries and anything you want to talk about fire. So toaster or gas grill. So this is the aftermath of a commercial kitchen somewhere in London, and the toaster is there, and it's all that gunge in front of it are chopping boards, polyethylene chopping boards. But there was a gas grill above it as well. So what I did is I got an exemplar of the toaster. What I would say to you on all your appliances is read the instructions that no one ever really does. And these are what they call an in attendance appliance, which means that when you finish with it, toaster, kettle, whatever it is, you unplug. Air fryer, you unplug it, or you switch it off, you isolate it. And couldn't be more clear on the timer. This is the thermal cutout around this there with the connectors on it, and the green cable is a thermocouple. So I wanted to see how hot it got by the thermal cutout, and if the cutout actually worked on this brand new toaster. Now, at the end of the day, the toaster shouldn't have been used in a commercial kitchen. That's what it says. Not to be used in the commercial kitchen, not to be left switched on, and to be unplugged after use. It was used in a commercial kitchen, it was left switched on, it was plugged in. The problem with, this is the thermocouple underneath where the crumb tray is, which is where the chopping boards would have been. So I went on the way to do this test. I bought about 8 loaves of bread, and I kept a sheet of the temperatures as they went up. And when the bread is there, of course, it absorbs a lot of the heat, and it doesn't get quite so hot as when it's empty. So then I took the bread out and I jammed you can see the wrench there, I've jammed the timer, because it's a mechanical timer, and this type of timer is known to jam. So when it's working, it ticks, tick, 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 and you're not listening to it because you're so used to it. When it stops ticking, you subconsciously think it's off. But there's plenty of cases with this type of toaster where it's still energised and it's still hot. So people come back to what we were talking about earlier, the burnt bit in the middle of their worktop or a burnt out kitchen. So the temperatures, we've got some burning on the crumb tray, but no flames. And these are just the temperatures that are kept, and where it says high, it means it's over 400 degrees, which is where the element temperatures were taken. So from this, took about a day to do the test. The most probable cause was that the toaster was left plugged, well, it was left plugged in on top of these polyethylene chopping boards, and they start to decompose at just over 100 degrees centigrade, and they would give off flammable vapours. Now this fire occurred about 5 hours after the cafe was shut down. So this decomposition is going on, and you're getting the vapours passing over the heating elements in the toaster until they flashed, and there was this fire. So, and we found also our electrical arcing inside the toaster, which indicated that that was where the flames first attacked the electrical system. So it was a significant financial loss. That certainly solved that problem. Now this fridge freezer manufacturer was having serious problems just as I was retiring from the fire brigade in 2011, where they were having a lot of fires. Their product is so good now, if people say to me, what fridge freezer would I buy that is the safest, it's one of these. So we'll have a look. So what happened was, we had the trading standards come up. I'll whisk through this. This is me with a blow lamp. I'm normally with a blow lamp or something that can catch fire. And the idea is I hold this against the back of the freezer in different places for 5 minutes. And although I've speeded it up, I'm going to speed it up even more because I can't show you the whole thing. So this is 30 seconds, 1 minute. Here we go, 2 minutes. You can see a little flame there, 4 minutes, up to 5 minutes. Right, I walk away and it goes out. Doesn't catch fire. So I think, right, in the middle there, you've got the drain pipe coming out of the back of the freezer section. So I thought, that's what we'll do. We'll set fire to that because that's got a break in it. So let's do it around that aperture and see if we can get that going. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes. I wasn't expecting this. I thought it was going to catch fire. Couldn't catch it like that. Self-extinguishes. Now we've got the Trading Standards officers here at the time, and we've got London Fire Brigade, and I was out with the brigade then. And this was at our facilities up at the Building Research Establishment up near Brickywood near Garston. So it's self-extinguished. So I thought, oh no, I'll go down to where the compressor is. That will get it going. And again, 5 minutes, 1 minute, 2 minutes. My knees are hurting now. 5 minutes, get up and it goes out. Can't do it. So we get another make, plastic backed, and we're going to do 5 minutes again at the top. But after 60 seconds, I thought, I think this has taken hold. So let's get round to nearly 60 seconds. Here it comes, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And I'm thinking, that's a minute, and it's taken hold. So I then take the flame away. I'm not going to hold it there for 5 minutes. And I think, that's taken hold. So then, what I then did was left it. And this is, you can see it creeping down.
Yeah.
It's doing quite a good job, isn't it? I'm thinking, hang on a minute, I'm going to lose my bottom test here, so I need to step in and really get involved with the bottom test. So I thought, let's get our money's worth. So let's light it at the bottom and see what happens. That's still creeping down slowly. So you can imagine if this is this combustible, what it would be like if there's a fire at the bottom where the compressor or the thermostat contacts are. And up it goes. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes. That's a pretty serious fire. And on vessels, when the fridge freezer gets involved, it can be the easy thing to blame because it's the bigger fuel load, because it's got all the polyurethane insulation around it. So we'll then be looking at the contactors of the thermostat, the compressor, any windings to see if we can see any unusual or abnormal electrical activity on those, where the contactors, for instance, are welded together and it's not switching on and off. So then we got hold of, you can see how bad that is. That's a serious fire. So then we got hold of another one that is advertised fall backed. They sell it as fall backed because it's fireproof. Oh, shocking name and shame. And here we are, so I thought I'll start at the bottom this time. There, 1 minute. 1 minute after the flames removed. 2 minutes. 3 minutes. 4 minutes. Now, if this is in a big burn hall with a massive cone calorimeter above it, you can imagine if it was in a property or certainly on board a vessel. Okay, so then the manufacturer, who you may have seen, has said, but the trouble is we're now getting fires. We know our appliance is safe. We're now getting fires, and it's getting blamed because it actually is in the fire. What can we do to perhaps do some tests on that? I said, well, let's build a kitchen. Let's put your appliance over here and another appliance on the other side, which is what we did. And in the middle there, we've got exactly midway, we've got a chip pan. And so we ignited the gas off burner, and the gas bottle was fed out the back. And here's another thing. So, and Carla knows this from Haven, Knox-Johnson, is when an insured says, you know, I threw a cigarette down and all of a sudden there was a fire, or I had the chip pan on and I turned round and it was in flames. No, it wasn't. This gives a lot of smoke before it transitions to flaming, a lot of smoke. And we saw the smoke, and then we get a flash of the oil, and the oil will burn like that for quite some time until it starts to grow, and then it starts to boil, and then it will go over the edge of the pan and impinge on other things. And we've recently had one like this, haven't we? And so what the insured was telling us wasn't a lie, but he was confused, and he just got his timings wrong. And witness testimony is dreadful. I don't really rely on it much. But you'll see here the lid explodes and the pea shoots out and nearly hits us. But anyway, and then you get the wall unit collapse and so on. So the purpose of this test, as we say, we've got 2 fridge freezers, and we can see now the right-hand chair's igniting with radiated heat. This is going to what they call flashover, where the radiated heat above ignites like the chair on the left. You can see it polarising, burst into flames, but it's just from radiated heat. So we've got our fridge on the left, and we can see the flames coming out the top of it. And we can see the fridge in the small picture on the right, where you can see it coming out around the door. So then it gets put out. Too early for me, I'd like to burn a bit more. But so the post-fire photographs, we can show here the remains of our fridge freezer, where the back is still intact. And this is the one I used before, so I could burn it. But inside was still intact. And here's the other freezer where it's completely gone. And we've seen that in the burn room. There we are, you can see the difference. Inside there, you've still got the plastic shelves. On the right hand side, completely destroyed. And of course, the manufacturer's very pleased about this. And I said to him, you really should advertise this so that your appliances are that safe. But they didn't. Anyway, gas hob. So this is, I'll show you this. So this is a circus company. They were parked up on the North Circular Road by Brent Cross, and they flew in some Romanians to do some labouring jobs for them. And then each of these trailers was converted into living accommodation. And in each trailer there were about 5 or 6 bedrooms, and each bedroom had 2 people in it. So it was a hovel, to say the least. These guys were, if anyone knows Brent Cross area, on the other side there's a Tesco's. It was that dirty, they went over to Tesco's, bought some cleaning equipment to clean it all up. They then decided that the next day they would use one of their rooms, so 2 would go into the other room, to make coffee and get ready for work. In the back of this trailer were 8 or 10 full-height propane cylinders in the same trailer. So what the circus was saying is they must have been leaning against this hob and turned the gas on. And when he tried to light it, there was an explosion. So the purpose of the test was to get an exemplar hob. You won't be able to hear me, but all I'm saying here is, this is the hob. Let's look at these knobs and see how they work. You get exactly the same appliance. Underneath there's a grill that you can see. I'll turn this down because you can't hear. They disconnected that grill because underneath the hob was a fridge. So they disconnected it. On some of the disconnected parts, they just taped it up. They hadn't even put a compression fitting on it, because otherwise it wouldn't sit flat on the floor. But you could still turn the gas on. But you had to push those in and turn them, and they clicked on, and then they would stay open. So that's the purpose of this little bit of video here. That's how they worked. You turned them on. You couldn't accidentally lean against it and then turn it on. So this is in my garden where I set a lot of fires. My neighbours love me. So I then connected this up, new hose, new regulator, just to make sure that this thing worked. And it did. So there we are. Look. You saw a bit of the COVID haircut then. So you could hear it coming out the gas, but it wasn't like hissing out very loudly through the regulator. Okay, so now we're going to just ignite them. And to see how they worked. I'll tell you, I'm going to move on to, because this one's difficult to see, so they did light, and when you blew them out, they went out, the gas kept coming out of them, and they shouldn't. They should have a little thermocouple that says, hang on, it's not hot, shut the valve off. So anyway, we can see it more with a, where it's a bit darker. So I didn't turn the middle one on because I couldn't risk gas coming out of the underside of it. This is on my gas barbecue that I use. I thought it's probably the safest place to use it. But I blew that out, light it again, it's still coming out. So you have to physically turn it on, ignite it, but then if you blow it out in this room, it wouldn't blow out accidentally. The gas would still be coming out. Anyway, what happened to these four lads is they were in two of the guys went in the room. There was this disgusting smell in there, and they thought it might be one of their friends. But they stood there talking for a while, and then one of the guys tried to turn the gas on to light it, and there was this explosion. All four of them were very severely burnt. Three of them were airlifted to Burns units, Chelsea, Chelmsford, different places. But the guy that was still in bed, they were giving him a little bit of a ribbing because he wouldn't get up and it was time for work. He had the covers on and he just woke up and he said it was just bright orange everywhere. So, you know, this is a real fuel-rich explosion. If it was a lean explosion, it would have done more devastation. There'd have been a bigger blast. It was very fuel-rich. And he said they couldn't get out of the door. Because of the slight deflagration and the heat, the door was distorted. Because they were these UPVC doors. So they managed to get out, but serious burns. So this helped with their claim against the company. So a gas leak, what this proved is a gas leak existed between the supply cylinders, one of them at the back, and the hob, causing this deflagration. And after I did the test, I found out, which supported that hypothesis, that somebody had turned the valve on that morning because they knew these guys would want to make coffee, but it wasn't one of those. So this trailer should be gas safe checked every time it relocates, but it wasn't. And the guy that signed it off, when I got the sign-off sheets, could see that he wasn't even signing off for the right appliances that were on there. So, you know, doing this test stands up good when you go to court. So here's another one. This was an interesting one. It was on a narrowboat at the St Pancras Basin, and the insured went to change a couple of cylinders he bought at a petrol station, and this is the result. He was on the bow deck, and he had the stove, which is just here, and there's a threshold going out to the bow deck. And as he was changing one of the cylinders, he took the black plug off, which he found difficult to get off, and propane started pouring out. Well, it's okay afterwards. Hindsight is a wonderful thing. You know, he was trying to turn it off, and he said it was off. I couldn't turn it anymore. Well, of course, the propane's gone over the threshold, hit the stove, and he's in a ball of flame. His wife was sitting in there. She managed to get onto the pontoon. But he then jumped into the Grand Union Canal and was rather pink, and he's got a few scars, but you know, a terrifying event. So the question is, did he misuse it? I mean, people who change these cylinders know it's an opposite thread for where the black plug goes. The defence were trying to say, well, it would have been coming out because the black plug isn't designed to hold gas back. Well, it is actually. And I've spoken to Cala Gas, and that is exactly what it's designed for. But isn't it better to show it in a test? Which is what I did. So, was it his misuse or not? So, this is in the front drive now with the tent up, so it takes a little bit of blast away from the house if it does, and PPE dressed appropriately. So basically what I was doing here is just looking at the cylinder. This is the same cylinder that he used. Looking at the black plug, so that's done up, and undo the valve fully, and show that the plug does up. Undo the plug completely. You see gases can come out, you'll hear it as it comes out, and then put the plug in and open the valve fully up. But then just put a little bit of soapy water around it. I normally put a light around it because you're just going to get a little jet flame pull out, then you can blow it out, can't you? But it's only dangerous. It's a bit like petrol, you know. When it's coming out the aperture, it's okay. It's if the container ruptures. So this is fully undone, and I think there might be, isn't it? Oh, there we are. There's a soapy wall. Look, nothing there. I did the soapy wall because if it's going to be presented, people might frown upon a lighter going around it. So nothing coming out of it. It's designed to hold back pressure. Oh, I did use a lighter, that I lied. But it didn't ignite anyway. So the other question was, can this be over tightened or over opened? Well, on the bottom of these, when you cut them through, there's a nylon washer that sits on a metal ring at the bottom. So when you over tighten it, or you think you've over tightened it, it doesn't really cut into the washer much, into the nylon plug. So you can always undo it. But when I put a torque wrench on it and I opened it up as tight as I could go, the neoprene washers on the shaft jam a little bit, and you can. It's over 5 Newton meters of torque on that to turn it. So if you've got the cylinder and you just bought it and you think checking it, you would think that was off, you know, without a doubt. And he said he checked it. So this actually proved. What else we did? This actually proved. Yeah, so I just put a torque wrench on it. That it had to have been opened when he bought it from the petrol station, because I spoke to Callum and I said, I take it that, well, I knew it, but I just wanted him to confirm it, that when you fill these up, you put your feed supply on, you open the valve fully, you feed it up to a certain percentage, I think about 84% or something, then you shut the valve down, disconnect your equipment, put the black plug in, yes. Then it goes from you over to Edmonton, and then out to the petrol stations. So the only place really this could have occurred was either Edmonton, which is not impossible, but highly unlikely, or the petrol station, where they're not meant to give the customer a key to go and change their cylinder. Well, it's not difficult to go along and say, can I just go and have a look at your cylinders? They give you a key, and there you go. That's what we've done. So that, and the other thing was, it's obvious when it's open. Well, when it's fully open, you can see that it only raises about 3 millimetres. So you can't tell if it's open or not, because it's the shaft going up inside the valve body. It's not the tap goes up and down. And you can just see that little gap there at the top between the metal handle and the valve body. And then we open it up again, you can see it just raises that little bit. It's not a lot. So the valve could not be over-tightened when it was closed. It could be over-tightened when it was fully open. The black outlet plug does hold back the gas if the valve is fully open. And the most probable cause was deliberate opening of the gas valve prior to resale at the petrol station. And I found out about 2 weeks ago that he had a good result from that claim as well, because of the tests that were done. So here's another little test that was interesting. So this is a building in Dubai, and what we can see there is there's a fire in progress, but the spotlights are on. There were 1200 watt spotlights down up the side of the building, and we can see where the fire is. The spotlight is still on. So it was said by another expert, well, it couldn't have been any defect with the light fitting because the light is still energised. So I said, well, it depends on where the cables feeding it are running, because if you're not going to get a short circuit, they're going to stay energised. So a simple test I did was I built a box in the garden again, and run the cables through, got a 1200 watt light. Let's just on. Okay, so there's the setup. So that's a 1200 watt light there, a little bulb here to show it's energised. And there's the light there, that one's coming on. And then light the material inside the box. And it ran for probably about 15, 18 minutes. A bit of a stir, get it going. And we can see the light still on and the 1200 watt light still on, and then we see the cable inside is burning, the insulation of the cable is burning. And the reason it eventually trips out is because the char on the inside of the box is conductive. So the electricity was arcing through the char, and that's what tripped the protection device. But there's a light on and there's a fire attacking the cable. So it was a simple test just to say, I'm not saying it was the light fitting that caused the fire, but you can't eliminate it because it could have been energised and caused a fire. With an inline, if a cable has a loose connection and you've got resistive heating, that will glow, and no protection device can detect that because there's no potential difference. So here's another one. So this was another narrowboat fire. Two people got serious burns with this. I mean, they were young people. One guy was a gardener, and he was, I think, about 30 years old, and life-changing injuries. And it was one of those cheap portable camping hobs that you put the gas in. I think they were about £10 from Tesco's. And again, I found out in the last month that they had a very, very good result on this, based on these tests. So what I did is bought an exemplar, bought a load of gas cylinders, and in the instructions, first of all it says not to be used indoors. Well, they used it on the bow deck and then brought it in because the weather was too bad and the wind was blowing the gas really. But the reason they say don't use it indoors is because of the carbon monoxide rather than anything else. But so what happened was the young lady saw flame around the control knob. So the young lad picks it up to take it outside. We didn't find out if he tried to turn it off, he couldn't remember, but as he took it outside, the canister exploded. Now, I've done, I can't remember how many tests I've done with aerosol cans when they explode. And it doesn't matter if it contains hairspray, paint, furniture polish, or butane, you'll get a fireball of about 3 to 4 metres. And every time it will just explode. And the canister can project 70 metres over 200 feet. It's that powerful deflagration. So when you've got a 4 metre fireball in a narrowboat galley, it's not going anywhere. So he was completely engulfed in flame, and he jumped in the. He jumped in there. This is somebody took this photograph of the boat when it was completely on fire. So what I did was looked at the kettle that they were using at the time to see if it was oversized, because in these instructions it will say you can't use a pan over a certain diameter. Now I can tell you this, I've said to nearly every fire investigator that I've come across or discussed this with them, what we did was, me and a colleague of mine who works one of our competitors, but he was in my team in London Fire Brigade. Did I tell you I was borough commander of the City of London, and I managed the fire and arson investigation team, which is next door. So we used to do a lot of fire tests. And anyway, we said, let's get this kettle and let's offset it so that the flame is going over the top of the cylinder. And this is one of those tests where we both said, but I wasn't expecting that, because the ambient temperature where we did this test place in Essex was about 23, 24 degrees centigrade. So I say to all my colleagues in fire investigation, how hot do you think we got the cylinder to with this kettle being pushed over the side? Anyone want to have a wild guess? mean, you know, I was getting 60, 80, 120. That says 7 degrees. And it went down to 6, actually went down to 5 because of Boyle's law. While that gas is coming out, it's cooling down the cylinder. Now, can you imagine having this hypothesis that what they've done is they've offset the kettle like they've done now, and the flame's pushing on top of the cylinder, and that's obviously what's exploded the cylinder. This test proved, that's down to 6 now, this test proved that the defect was with the gas valve and not with misuse, which was very important to these 2 young people that had these horrific burns. And apparently they had a good settlement based on these tests. But it was one of those, wasn't expecting that. Petrol and cigarette myths. How are we doing for time? We're okay, we're on track. So this is one of our colleagues, Steve Andrews. He used to work for the Forensic Science Service of the Metropolitan Police. I've got a picture of my wife doing this, but I thought Steve might be better. This is one of the myths in starting fires. A cigarette will not start a petrol fire. So why are we doing this? Because we had a murder case where the guy said, petrol splashed on my girlfriend's clothing while I was cleaning motorbike parts in my kitchen, as you do, and I brushed past with a cigarette and she burst into flames. So always got to remember to put the cap back on. But it's worth watching this. So what Steve's doing now, Steve now teaches at UCLan, University of Central Lancashire, and he does a lot of police work for us. But he'll extinguish the cigarette in there, and then remember to move move that over, Steve. And then he'll light the cigarette, and you'll see.
That's different.
Now, and that's why they say don't smoke in petrol stations. It's the lighter.
Yes.
Not the cigarette. It's like mobile phones. There isn't anywhere documented on this planet that a mobile phone is not intrinsically safe or will start a fire. So anyway, so now what he does is he'll get the tray. Oh, this is what I was saying about when you light the top of it. That's all you get. You don't get a big explosion. And then put it up. It's just burning. It's the vapour that's burning.
Yeah.
And that's where it's venting, where it's mixing with air. It won't burn inside. It's too rich. So what he's done, he's got a bit of clothing, splash a bit of petrol on there. I think this is good old unleaded. E10 is it? So he'll now light a cigarette.
And stand further back.
When me and my wife did this out in Croatia, do you remember?
I do.
We did it in Croatia. So Claire's doing this over a glass of petrol in there, and then dipped it, and then I had to remember to move the petrol container over there while I lit the cigarette over there. Everyone stood back, didn't they? So yeah, here's Steve proving that, you know, even if you're puffing on it and really getting that coal burning, it won't ignite. And just to prove the point, he'll put a naked flame to that in a minute, and we'll see that burn. But there's so many films. I mean, it's great because while the bad people believe that's what you can do, they'll use that as their defence, and you can blow them out the water. And there we are, look at that. Burns very well, doesn't it? Burns very well. Well done, Steve. So, watered Christmas trees. This is my big beef at the moment, and I've put a load of these on YouTube. I burn the Christmas tree every year to prove a point, because I know the guys out in Mist in America, and they keep advertising a well-watered Christmas tree is safe. So, first year I did it, I just put it in the stand and filled it up with water, and as the water went down, filled it up, and it doesn't shed a lot of needles, but the difference in weight when you get a real Christmas tree to this one, you can pick up with one hand. Took it out and go and set light to it. So then this one, this is a 5-minute fire safety message about real Christmas trees. Please remember this message every year. So what I did was, let's have a look. Christmas tree fire safety. Okay, we don't need to sell that. So what I did this year is a Christmas tree. Not a lot of needles on the floor. But what I did was I drilled holes in the bottom, deep holes, to try and help suck the water up. It's not going to do a lot. It must do something because the needles don't fall off a little bit. But you can see it's damp and wet and everything else. So then, look, COVID haircut. Look. Now the moustache, 3 times I grew that moustache because I was taking my wife on the Orient Express. And when it comes to it, I trimmed it down to the Poirot moustache. It was cancelled twice because of COVID. So I had to grow it again. But anyway, here we are. And so it is a Christmas tree. So what I'm simulating here is a transformer for perhaps fairy lights or something as a driver for LEDs being positioned under the tree, or that bunch of plugs that are put under the tree under a cover. So a small flame, and it was a tiny little cube with a firelighter, and most of it was left after the event. But just watch this in less than 60 seconds. And again, like the fridge, got a massive heat release rate quickly. And if that's in a room, well, first of all, it's going to suck all the oxygen out of the air, so you're going to be overcome very quickly. And basically, the message is: if you see a flame anywhere near a real Christmas tree, get out of the room, get everyone out of the room and shut the door, because you're not going to be able to put it out with the extinguisher. No smoke detector is going to protect you against this. They really are not safe. Look, 53 seconds from ignition. Now, the year before, I set it down the other end, and my neighbour had a big fir tree. And I put it on LinkedIn, and someone said that was very irresponsible. You could have set that fir tree alight. I said, I'm in dispute with my neighbours. It was a Leander, and I was hoping to set it alight. But anyway, so that's the Christmas tree. So they're not safe, even if they're well watered. Okay. Right, murder or not, and then we can have a bit of discussion about whatever you want, and maybe lithium batteries as well. Murder or not. So this is a case that was in Hertfordshire back in 2004, because 2005 we had the London bombings, and I was up there in the murder squad room discussing this. So the police had spent nearly £3 million on this case in a year, with undercover work, intelligence work, and everything else. It was on Crime Watch, where they do this reconstruction. And they gave us access to the Holmes database and all of the information that they had, all of the evidence. So why did they come to us? Because we run an association called the UK Association of Fire Investigators, and I was a president. I set it up in 2003. And one of the CSI examiners there said, why don't you ask Peter and Nick, who was one of my colleagues, to come up, see if they can just throw some light on this. Father burnt alive near his own home by a vicious gang, because as he was dying, he said, 3 lads jumped me, poured petrol on me and set him on fire. Which to me is, I need to know a lot more. So we looked at where it took place. So this is a walkway up in Boreham Wood, and it's not a road, it's a walkway. This is where it was first seen on fire. And if you look here, bedrooms, all these people were about. There was a woman in bed. She said the first thing I heard was a high-pitched screech, not a kerfuffle. Now you could, if I stood there and whispered, they would hear me in the bedrooms. So they didn't hear a kerfuffle. They didn't hear anything. So I was doing my PhD at the time, and I developed these fire investigation roadmaps. So about the person. So I was sitting in this murder squad, and I said, "Has he been the victim of an attack before?" I said, "Yeah." About 3 or 4 months ago, and he was mugged. I said, what was taken? Nothing. Oh, right. So they showed me the photographs of this knife attack where they scratched his neck with a knife. I'm no forensic psychologist, but that looks like he's done it himself. And it turned out that that's what they thought. Because the police, anyone here from the police, they will not actually share anything with you if they don't need to. They want you to come up with the answers or ask the questions, then they'll tell you. So this is the eyewitness that also saw the fire when the flames first started. So I went back there at the same time of night that it started. So it's about 70 minutes, 200 feet away, and that's what they would have seen. And they described, with this screen, fire low down on the floor, and then the flames grew up. This was the remains of his jacket. So when I asked, where is the jacket? It's still in police compound. I said, can we go and have a look at it? It was all sealed up, and the reason they thought it was murder is because they were told there were 2 different petrols used, because a forensic engineering company that did petrol branding for Formula One identified different propoxants, which are detergents, in the 2 different petrols. Now, I'm not a chemist, but I managed to link all of these together, because if Esso run out of petrol, they will buy from Texaco, and they will buy from Sainsbury's, and it all gets mixed up. So, and they said there was a different petrol on the top half than the bottom half, and I said, what do they do? Lay them down and baste it? I said, you know, they wouldn't do that. So we found 1 petrol can. So 1 petrol can, 2 petrols, no ignition source, 3rd party involvement. Because I thought he'd done it himself, funny enough. So then I found out more about him, this character, and I thought, we need to do some tests on this. So the first thing I did, I said, I want to go to the forensic science lab and look at this after we'd x-rayed it. Because when we x-rayed it, one of the questions I asked first of all was he a gambler? And he was. So these are the little pendants you get in a betting office, apparently, and that circle is the remains of disposable lighter. And when I asked why this wasn't mentioned in the forensic report, I was told because it's a common pocket item, it wasn't worth mentioning. And this is someone who's been set on fire that's a non-smoker. Anyway, each their own. So what we did is we got this wooden dummy, woody, and you sand woody down so it's all clean wood. And then you do the fire test and you look at the burn patterns on the body. And so we did 10 fire tests. This is my Popo Nick. And he is woody with exactly the same clothes on that Wayne had on the night of his death. And we poured a quantity of petrol on it. We timed it 2 minutes 43 seconds or something from the bus stop he got off to where he was set on fire. And we put a lighter, like you saw with Steve Andrews with the cigarette. This was, the ambient temperature was about 5 degrees, 6 degrees, which was the same as the night of the fire. And we put a lighter on the jacket, and it was that cold, it wasn't igniting. It wasn't igniting the petrol on there. So we put a piezo igniter in his pocket, and that's that lead going in. And when we ignited that, because you've got a nice vapour trap there, it ignited in his pocket, and then this is what happened. So it flashed around his body, and all the vapour was on the floor. So we saw this big fire on the floor coming up, and you can see the head of the Woody there come up under his chin. And when we compared the burn damage to Woody compared to the post-mortem photographs, the burns matched very well, with under the chin and under the nose. So it wasn't petrol poured on his head. The other thing is with a container, you get that container, you try pouring petrol out, it goes, it doesn't gush out, you need an open bucket to throw it at somebody and then ignite it as you do it, and there was no noise or anything else. So we went back to the coroner and said, we think he's poured petrol over himself, not with the intention of perhaps setting himself on fire, because the light was still in his pocket, but he's flicked it and it's ignited him because he was an attention seeker. He had a history of this. And the coroner agreed because the inquest was an unlawful killing, but the coroner said, even with the evidence we've got, it would only be possible to return an open verdict, and it wasn't in the public interest. So they didn't have another inquest. That's fine. What it meant was Hertfordshire Police could shut the case as a solved crime, as it were. So I've really rushed through those, but I'm amazed I've done it in 47 minutes. But I'm happy to talk about anything you want. I will say something about lithium-ion batteries, I'm involved in a couple of super yacht fires at the moment. They can be the easy thing to blame when it's burnt down to the waterline and you can't find anything else, because they're everywhere. My opinion on vessels is the most dangerous pieces of equipment at the moment are electric scooters and bikes. I've seen lots of electric scooters in marinas where people are all over the place with them, get around the marinas, especially the large marinas. And there's a reason why the London Underground have banned them, because the battery packs are low down. That's where the impact gets, whether it's on a curb or something in the road or bump. And batteries that get banged around, lithium-ion batteries, is not a good thing. The other thing, I'm working with Cole, with British Marine, on giving safety messages and simple punchy messages to boat owners, and that is every lithium-ion battery appliance you've got, label the charger for that appliance. Just because that fits that battery doesn't mean you can use it. And I'll give you an example quickly. Is that there's a medical device, massage device, that is on lithium-ion battery, and it's supplied. I don't know because I've got one, but our company is investigating a fire that is involved with one of these appliances, and it comes just with the cable into the appliance and the USB plug. So you put it into your 5.1 amp outlet, but when you look at the instructions, it's rated at 1 amp. So they're not providing you with the right plug, so there's an issue going on there. But matching the appliance charger with the appliance is critical. On the charter boats, there's no, I haven't seen, and we've done a few presentations at some of these super yacht shows, battery management systems. Now, I was a drone pilot for a while, and to get certified by the Civil Aviation Authority, I had to keep a logbook of my batteries. And I was saying earlier that before I flew, I had to look at the state of charge. After I've flown, look at the state of charge. How many minutes was it flying? Because if there's a difference in that battery through the logbooks, it stands out. A visual inspection each time. These charter boats, they're using sea bobs, surfboards, whatever the toys are in the garage, they're swapping around. If the battery's not holding its charge, but it will do for another half a day because the clients are paying big money, they'll do it until it stops charging. And then what they do, they put it somewhere where they shouldn't put it. So battery management is critical. But I've said enough.
The difference between lithium phosphate, lithium ion, the charging rate is much higher in some of them. Are there some more flammable than others?
Well, say that lithium phosphate ion are best for the vessels because they don't burn. They won't ignite, but they do. You can look on YouTube, you can see someone's punching through one of them, but they're not as reactive. That's the thing, they're not as reactive. The trouble with lithium ion is when they go, it's so much energy release so quickly, it is such a blowdown effect. And that's why the fire spreads so quickly. But all of the batteries can burn quite nicely, but the lithium ion. And I mean, has anyone got an e-vehicle? You enjoying what you got?
No, I'm sorry, I was going to say I've got lithium ion on my boat.
Oh, right.
Actually, yes, the power.
Yeah. Oh, have you? Yeah. And again, you know, when they're designed right, and it's now you'll be seeing some vessels where they're just replacing the lead acid or gel batteries, dropping in a lithium ion battery and saying that will do. They're not checking the rest of the system or.
But they got wrong charging voltages and everything else.
Yeah, and I've just done a double-decker bus, electric double-decker bus fire. It had 24,000 cells in 5 packs. 24,000. I had 18 650. Yeah, 18 minutes. They're changing it now. They call them 18,650. They're changing 1865, which makes sense. But of course now Tesla are making larger cell for their battery packs. So you're getting less batteries. But what's going to happen to all the old stuff? It's a little bit of Emperor's got new clothes for me. I mean, it's a fantastic energy source because the density of energy that's contained is constant.
I use them on model yachts. They are very small, very light, but most clubhouses insist that they're not charged in the clubhouse.
Yeah, good
They're charged at home, and you look at them and you watch them while you're charging them.
Yeah.
Mainly when they're being charged, because just what you say, they all have different charging rates, and you put the wrong charger on.
Exactly.
Charge it too quickly.
But also you've got that the monitor cable that will tell you if it's over this, because they haven't got a battery management system in those batteries. So the battery management system is part of the charger. If they're not connected properly, we've had quite a few model aircraft and boats and where they've left that off, and it's either overcharged, but you know with these batteries you can over discharge them as well, and that forms dendrites which punches the separator, and now you've got a direct short circuit. I was out in Germany for the Global Marine Associated Global Marine Investigators, and I was out with my wife, and we got some battery packs and drilled into them and got them going, and they weren't very well charged, but they soon got going. I put them out with the jet, passed them around, and I think a lot of people were surprised that they were these little, almost like AA batteries in these packs. Everyone said, yeah, they agreed it was out, so we put it down over there and carried on setting fire to other things. And about 20 minutes later, it started up again. And this is the problem with it.
How much fun you must have had playing with all these
low
lamps. But the one that I think some very interesting lessons, and I think the one that really shocked me was how flammable these Christmas trees are. If there's any chance that the charger is going to. But thank you very much indeed, Peter. And also from Joe and Carl for coming along as well. And if there are any other questions.
Can I ask, if you go to the pound shop, you can buy chargers and they fit your Apple phone and like that, and they work. I have found that sometimes they do not work at all, or they get very hot. So what do you recommend? Stick with my Apple charger?
Definitely.
Oh.
I'll tell you something about Apple. Many years ago, there was the plugs, the fake plugs, as they were.
Yeah.
Let's say the Apple charger had something like 36 components in it. The fake one had about 6. And what they did to make up the weight was embed a bit of metal the same weight as the other components. So when we x-rayed them, you could see that they weren't the real thing. That's the only way you would know. And they were being sold in Apple shops that were fake Apple shops. And all the people that worked there thought they worked for Apple. But everything in there was counterfeit. So it's very difficult. You know, you can say, a bit of reverse psychology. I bought a Canon battery from a camera, and I was going to buy one on Amazon. I thought, practice what you preach, you know, get something good, because I thought, and I know they're nearly £50. I think it's £26. Then I found a Canon supplier, and it was more like the right price. And I thought, what if that's the fake one, and they're putting on the higher price, so I think I'm buying the real thing. So I just went to Canon. But it is difficult. And here's the other thing I would say, put your hand up if you've ever experienced a fire in your life where the fire brigade have had to come and put it out. Now, there we are. You only want to experience that once, don't you?
Yes, and also we thought we'd put it out, but we got into something else.
It gets into a void or something like that. And but I can ask 200 people, and most people haven't experienced it. So I say, well, do you know a friend that has, or somebody you know? And no. And here I am giving you all these examples because I see this on a weekly basis. And unfortunately, I see the devastation that it brings, and the turmoil and upset and injury. I'm working on one at the moment where a guy set himself on fire doing body repairs. His injuries were so bad, he was put in induced coma. He had one hand amputated, one thumb amputated, and he was in hospital for over a year with over 100 surgeries. And I've now got to find out what happened, how could that have happened. And
Interested in the toaster example at the start. Which typical household appliances would you switch off or unplug before going on holiday or going to bed?
Great
at night?
question. Great question. The one I'd like to switch off is the fridge freezer. But I isolate the immersion, the televisions, which are on all the time on standby. I'll switch those off. But other than that, and isolate the tumble dryer, dishwasher, washing machine. But there are some things you've got to leave on timers, lights, and position sort of lights on timers on surfaces where if anything goes wrong with the LED bulb, then hopefully it won't spread too far. But I've got 15. I don't even mention. I've got 15 smoke detectors.
What?
All wires. Yeah, I thought I must have one under the stairs because that's where my consumer unit is and I can't move it. And then I knocked through the kitchen and put a lantern light in. I'll put it at the highest point there. Then I bought a blind that covers the lantern light. And I thought that's going to stop the smoking. So I put one in the dining room. And then I thought, but if it happens around the fridge, so I put one in the fridge. And they talked to each other. And one night it said, "Warning, warning! Smoke detected in the hall." I was up. Now, where is it? And it was one under the stairs. I forgot to give it a hoover, so got a bit of fluff in it. But you can get a bit paranoid about these things.
I'm really, Joe, I'm not surprised.
Can I just ask you, I was curious about the cigarette not lighting the petrol, whereas a naked flame does. Is that to do with the temperature difference between the lighted cigarette and, could you explain why that is?
It really is a difficult one to explain because what we've also done is thrown a cigarette so you get a little spark, but it's got such low energy in the tip of that cigarette. The temperature might be high, but the energy to transfer into the petrol so when Steve was puffing on it, you get a little bit of vapour coming off there, but it's just not enough to ignite it. But a spark, for instance,
More energy in the spark.
More energy in the spark. I've got to tell you this story, it's funny. So there's this guy, he was a young lad, lived in bedsit above some shops in the Edgware Road. So there was a gas explosion. So I went in, and what actually happened is they were doing some work in the shop, but in his bedsit, they cut this 20mm copper gas pipe, but there was no gas in the apartment at all. They'd taken the lever off the wall downstairs. They hadn't capped the pipe, so it was an open pipe. So when they were doing the shop up, they'd sent the apprentice to reconnect the gas, and he couldn't remember which meter it was, so he turned them all on. So our man comes in, and I said to him, "So talk me through what happened." He said, "Well, come on, I smell this terrible smell." So I opened the window to ventilate, you see. So what he's done, he's got a very rich mix in it that may not have ignited if he did what he did. But he's leaned it out, he's got it within its stoichiometric mix, which means it's going to go. So I said, "Then what did you do?" He said, "Well, I sat in bed and lit a cigarette." I said, "Talk me through what happened." I'm amazed because he wasn't there. Talk me through what happened. He said, "Well, the flame came out of the lighter and it just got bigger and filled the room up." I said, "You should go and buy a lottery ticket."
Well, thank you very much indeed,
Good
Peter.
I've got some cards up here. If anyone ever thinks they might, unfortunately, need to talk to me, or you remember something that you'd like
If
to.
you have any more questions, then
Please
I'm
do.
sure Peter will be delighted to answer them after dinner.
Absolutely.
It's time to move into the dining room. Thank you very much indeed.
All the bushfires.
Interesting.